So I'd like to firstly welcome you all to the ACR webinar on the month-end processes, the how, what, when and where. This is our October webinar and should be good. This webinar is going to take us through the four primary month-end processes within ACR. There is a fifth month-end process for the payroll system that only deals with payroll. We won't be covering that in this webinar itself. We'll only be covering the four primary ones that all users of our system will need to consider at one point or another. So we're going to cover the different types of month-end processes, a bit about what each of them actually does in the back end of the system and why it's important to do them, and give you an idea about what time of the month they need to be or should be run, and a bit about the order that you can run these things in that will not affect your ongoing processes. So what we're going to do is just let you know there is a Q&A available at the end of the webinar. So please, if you've got any questions, any comments, feel free to save them up, ask them at the end. What I will do at the moment, just to make sure that everyone can hear me, is I'll ask if everyone could select their green raised hand icon, just to indicate that you can hear me. Alright, we've just got one more person that we're just waiting on. Awesome. Okay. So, as I was saying, please feel free to... the microphones have been disabled during this webinar, but please feel free to put any questions or any comments in the questions box, and we'll definitely address those at the end of the webinar. So, what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover what the month-end processes are, where in the ACR menu you can find them. I am aware that people who've been using ACR for a while will probably be aware of where they are, but when we had a recent update of our menu searching, we did find that a few people were used to just typing in a certain search term and getting the top level menu, and may not necessarily have known exactly where they actually were kept in the default menu. So we're just going to cover that just to give a bit more detail on exactly where they are as we get to them. We're also going to cover what each of them is designed to do. So that's give you a bit of background information about what the process you're running is actually doing and why you're running it. We're trying to help people who may have run this for a while but not necessarily fully grasp why they run certain processes. They just run it because it's part of the process. So hopefully we can clear up some issues around that. We're also going to do how to go through and complete a full month end. We are going to actually complete a full month end in one of our test systems for each of the month ends. And as I said, I'll also be going over a little bit about when to complete each of these month ends. So, to start with, within ACR we have four month end systems: the debtors/systems month end, the banking month end, otherwise known as a bank reconciliation, the creditors month end, and the accounting month end. These are the four primary month ends in our system, and they can all be accessed from the default menu. It is possible to create customized month end menus if you'd like, whether you do one month end menu that has all of the features, or whether you do a debtors, a creditors, an accounting, and a banking month end menu. That's your choice, but it is a suggestion we have made to people in the past if they find they have some issues with trying to get staff who are not familiar with this process to be able to run it. So each of these month ends does relate to a unique part of the ACR system. So you've got the four systems: the debtors system, which is related to your customers and sales; your creditors system, which is related to your suppliers and your purchasers; the banking system, which links basically the bank and those two separate systems; and the accounting system, which sort of looks at all of them overall. As a very general rule, we would normally see people run the debtors month end first, then a bank reconciliation, the creditors month end, and then finally an accounting month end. They don't need to be run all on the same day, they don't need to be run all in the same week, and it's actually not common to see people run all four of them in a single day or all four of them in a week. As a very broad generalisation, well, the debtors month end has to be run on the last day of the last trading day of the month. The bank reconciliation is generally run the next trading day or when the statement becomes available from the bank. The creditors system a week to 3 weeks later, accounting system sometime after the creditors system. As I said, that's just a very generalised rule, but it gives you an indication if you were looking at what type of timing that you thought would be useful. That's a rough estimate of timing. Again, each company is going to run this slightly different depending on how quick does your bank make a bank statement available, how good are your creditors at getting invoices and you being able to get them all processed and get any stock receipts processed, and do you have any delays in any journals you may need to create for the accounting month end. So, in saying all of that, within ACR itself, we have actually put some checks and preventions in place to try and stop people either accidentally running the wrong month end or running the same month end twice. This is something we have had people in the past who may be splitting their attention between the month end and another process have happened. So it's something that we're aware of, and we've tried to put checks in place. And these are things where something as simple as it checks whether how long ago your last month end was run. If you try to run the same month end within 15 days of the last time you ran it, the system will give you an indication and a warning of this. Now, before we go any further, I just will say, if you get warnings or error messages, please don't just click on them and pass over them. They are generally there for a very good reason, and we do recommend you pay attention to them and have a look at what exactly it's asking you so that you can then address it correctly. It's much easier to address an issue when it happens than to pass through it, finish off, then call us and say, I've had this problem. So, what we're going to do now, we're going to go into actually the first of these month-end processes, and this is the debtors month-end. So, the debtors month-end is kept under the toolbox menu, under maintenance, system month-end procedure. Now, it's kept here even though it does relate to the debtors system. This is just where it's being kept on this current menu. As I said, if you were going to create a custom menu, you would want to have the heading and all of these items available in that custom menu. Okay, so the debtors month-end process. This process needs to be run after completing the day-end process on the last trading day of the calendar month and before starting to trade on the first calendar day of the new month. So what I mean by that is if the last day of the month is on a Tuesday and the first day of the month is on a Wednesday, you would need to run it sometime between doing the day end on Tuesday, or after doing day end on Tuesday, but before starting to trade as Wednesday. Alternatively, if it's over a weekend, if say the last day of the month is the Friday, you don't trade on the weekend and you next trade on the Monday, sometime between close of business on Friday and starting business on Monday, this process needs to be run. So, most sites we find will run this straight away. As soon as they've finished for the day, they run their day-end process, they'll then get in, run their month-end process, get the archive month-end happening, go home and come back the next day to do statements and such. Generally this doesn't take a long time, depending on how much time is taken in the payment allocation and the reconciliation phase. And for this process, ACR provide a dedicated support number that we email out. This support is dedicated debtors month-end support, where if you have a problem, you can come straight through to a trainer, talk to them, and they can action it straight away for you and get you back up and running ASAP. So the process for actually doing the debtors month end. So what you would do now with debtors month end, the key is to have the system date the last calendar day of the month. This sounds obvious, but on months where the last day of the month may be a Saturday or Sunday, if you don't trade on Saturday and Sunday, if you're doing this day end on a Friday and the actual if you're doing this month end on a Friday and the actual last day of the month is a Sunday, you'll need to manually adjust the system date to be the last day of the month. If you don't do this, your debtor agings are not going to be absolutely correct, and the month end process is actually going to tell you you need to fix the date up. So it's better to do it right at the start rather than get partway through and then have to restart. So to change the date, we just go into the sales, tasks, set system date, or set system date sales. So this is telling me that my month end is due. That's fine. Yes, we want to change the date. So we're going to change the date to the 31st of July. I'm using the year 2010 because that's where our test system is at the moment. So we click on OK. That updates the date. Nice and easy. Now we're ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is make sure that we've got any day end processes done. So I'm just going to run my clear register totals, perfect, and my invoice sales journal because we have both of these systems in our test system. Alright, so now I've got my date set correctly, I've run my day end processes, I'm ready to go ahead with the month end. So the first process we run in the month end is the debtor payment allocation. Alright, so the debtor payment allocations make sure that any payments that have been made by your customers have been correctly allocated against the correct invoices. This is important because you do the debtor payment allocation, you allocate off any paid invoices so that when you go to do the debtor aging, it will then age any unpaid invoice or unpaid part of an invoice according to their debtor terms. That all then gets archived in the month-end process, ready for the statements to actually be run against it. So this is a key part of the process to make sure that you don't end up having part allocated payments or payments that aren't allocated against it, or when the statements come out, invoices showing on there that shouldn't be because they'd already been paid. This is the point that you can get that sorted here. So within the system, you can either go through, do the manual allocation, you can use the auto or the alloc. Auto basically will go through and try and match up any payments and any invoices that balance against each other and allocate them off. So with this, you can set specific dates. I generally leave the all dates when I'm doing this part. The customer, again, you can set specific customers. With the month-end process, I'm tending to go, right, I want to allocate it off all of my customers. And then you can set whether you want to just have it automatically apply any taken discounts, skip the discounts, or prompt for each discount. So at this point, I'll do the apply taken discounts and click OK. So that's gone through. As we can see down the bottom, auto allocate complete. Now for me, this is fine. For you, you may want to actually take a bit more time and go through and check specific allocations. You may have certain allocations that you know need to be split that won't be handled by the auto and alloc. So this process may take a little bit more time for you, but in essence, what I've just done is enough to continue with the month-end process. So the next function we'll do is the debtor reconciliation. So what this is going to do, this is going to produce a summarized list of all debtor transactions over the month, as well as give me a split down at the bottom of different values to use to reconcile my debtors. So what I've got at the top, I'll have my list of transactions. Down on the bottom here, I have different information. So total INV is total sales from the invoicing system. If you're a retailer with the point of sale system, that's obviously going to show as nothing. If you're a wholesaler with an invoicing system, your sales will show there. If you've got our mail order system active, total sales from mail order. Total sales from point of sale for our retailers. Total rec, that's the total cash receipts for debtors that you've processed through the banking system. So if you've got an invoicing and a point of sale system, that will be the combined total for both of them that you process directly through the banking system. Total journal, the total value of accounting and general journals that you have entered that have been put directly to the debtors. So if you do a journal that has a debtor involved in it, that value will show here. Now each of these will show in the type. It'll actually tell you whether it's a receipt, whether it's a sale, whether it's a journal up the top. Total pay, the total of cash payments done. So if you've done any cash payment journals, they will show here as a total. All of these values will show as Inc. GST values. The reason for that is your debtors owe you GST, and when you do sales, that total sale is a GST inclusive sale. The debtor owes you the total value of that GST inclusive sale, so that will show here. Total discount. A total discount shows you an exclusive of GST value of how much of discounts you have given to your debtors in the month. Total discount GST shows you the GST value on those discounts. You'll see you've got a month total and a report total, and you've got a debtors side and a short-term debtors side. So if you're one of our retail customers and you use the point of sale system, you might have short-term or COD customers as well as regular account customers. So the values will show separately, but the total balance will show at the bottom. That effectively is the reconciliation. Now the reconciliation balance should balance to your age trial balance total value, and that is one thing you can use to reconcile them. This last page is probably the most key page on the reconciliation. If you were going to print a page to keep it as part of your records, it would be the last page would be recommended. Okay. So once you have the data reconciliation done, you're happy it's correct. Once you've got it done, you'll see this message. This message is going to come up a number of times in printing reports during the month-end processes. If you ever get asked about the reprint question by an ACR trainer, this is the message they're talking about. With this message, this is basically when you run a report that is going to get information ready for archive, it will ask you, are you sure the information's correct, and are you ready for it to be locked away, ready for archive? The actual question is asking reprint question mark. That's asking, do you want to reprint this? If you click yes, it will reprint the exact same report straight away. If you click abort, it will cancel the printing process, allowing you to go back and make changes again. So if you did that reconciliation, realized something was wrong, you could abort, re-go back, correct the mistake, run the payment allocation again, run your data reconciliation. If you're happy with it this time, you click no. If you run it the first time and you're happy with it, it's asking you, do you want to reprint it? No, I don't. I want to go and lock this information away, so I can now click no. Now, that will lock that data reconciliation information away. The next time I run it, it will be from anything that is done from now until the next time I run that data reconciliation. So if somebody was to accidentally run it in the middle of the day on the last day of the month and select no, and then you ran it in the evening and you're wondering why there's so little information, it's because the other person has run it earlier in the day and selected no to the reprint question. Okay, so the third process we're going to do in our debtor month end is the debtor agings. So this is the actual process that goes about aging the debts that your debtors owe you. So this is where it has a look at when was the invoice created, what debtor terms is the creditor on, what's the date that you're aging as, and then it will move that invoice into the correct period. So if you've got a customer on 7 days, it will have a look at when was the invoice created, or if you've got a customer on 7 days from invoice, it'll look at when was the invoice created, how much further along is it now, find the correct period to put it into, and insert it into that period. If you've got a customer that's on 30 days from end of month, then obviously it'll do the same thing, but instead of looking at 7 days from the invoice date, it will go to the end of the month the invoice was created, add 30 days, and then start looking at it from there. So, in saying that, the aging date becomes very important in this report, and this aging date is up in the top corner here. This aging date, if you're trying to run the debtor's aging, or if you're trying to run the debtor's reconciliation and you haven't set the date to the last day of the month, this aging date will generally pick up the date that you have actually got, like your system date, the date your system is set at. So if you were running the aging on the last day of the month, the last working day of the month, and it's not the last actual day of the month, and you ran the aging, you then ran the reset, it said, oh, you need to fix it up, the date up, you fixed the date up, ran the reset, come the next day and you find that your debtors aren't quite aged correctly, it's most likely because the aging date has been left incorrect. So this is a key thing to check before you run the debtor aging. Now, to run the actual debtor aging for the month-end process, you do need to run one for your debtors and one for your short-term debtors. So for our retail customers, you will actually need to run this twice. Once for debtors, once for short-term debtors. For our wholesale customers who don't tend to have the short-term debtors, you generally run it once for your regular debtors. Most people will leave the debtor aging as no report. It is possible to get a summary or a detailed report. It is also possible to come back and reprint this later. So a lot of people will just have it age the debtors without generating a report as of the last day of the month when they're going through actually doing the month-end process. So that's what we'll do. We'll just select OK to that. Now, for our retail customers, if you just selected debtor, clicked OK and aged it, the system will allow you to continue. You need to remember to come back and age your short-term debtors as well. The system won't alert you that you haven't aged it or remind you that you may need to. It is something you do need to be mindful of when you're running it. Okay, so that's the process. Now what you may have noticed is as I've been working through here, under the system month-end procedure, I've been working top to bottom. We've set this menu item up so that you start at the top, work through to the bottom. Trying to make it as easy as possible for people who are using this. So we've done the payment allocation now. We've done our reconciliation. We've aged our debtors. We're now ready to do the month/year-end reset for sales. So this is our system month-end. This is the second last procedure we actually need to do on the last, after the day-end procedure of the last trading day of the month. So what we do, we come in here. Okay. So what that's telling me is that last month I didn't run archive month-end utility. If you've ever had one of the ACR trainers come up to you after the end of the month has occurred and say, hey, you need to run your archive month end, this is why they tell you that. We usually check that about a week before, after the month end is run, to make sure that you don't have this type of issue come up when you go to do your month end process. So we will go into more depth on the archive month end, but basically what it's doing, it's archiving the information that we get ready when we do the month end procedure. So as you can appreciate, if you're actually going through doing this month end procedure on the last calendar day of the month and you're trying to get home, having the archive month end pop up to have to do it is a bit of a pain. So what we'll do now, we'll come with the month/year end reset, and what this will do, this will tell us what month we're going to be closing. So we're going to be closing July 2010, gives you the month ID in numbers, so July the 7th month of the year. The year is 2010 because that's where our system is, who's running it. It tells us what type of month end we're doing as well. That's important. We have had people in the past who, if they are not familiar with the month end procedure, accidentally run the creditors one when they meant to run the debtors one. So if you do have somebody who's going to be running it for the first, and is not familiar with it or running it for the first time, make sure they check that the month end procedure they're in says debtors, debtors, debtors. It says debtors date in here. It says debtors. If you're in a different process like creditors or accounting, it will tell you what the creditors or the accounting, it'll say creditors or it'll say accounting. Alright, so within here, this is the actual month/year end reset for sales. This has a check to see that you didn't run this less than 15 days ago. The reason for that is that it's trying to stop people running it, getting distracted, coming back, asking themselves whether they've run it before and rerunning it. It sounds like something that you may think isn't possible, but as most of us know, things get busy. You get busy, you're trying to get home, something distracts you, you come back, you're trying to figure out what's happened or not. You can sometimes accidentally rerun something that you didn't mean to. So we've got those checks in place to try and help stop that occurring. So what we can do then, when we're ready to run it, we click the activate button. This is the actual message I was telling you about with it. So what it's telling me, it's actually checking the actual date, not the date in the system here. So it's telling me that at 8:40 this morning I ran a debtors month end in the ACR system. It's telling me that it took 2 minutes to run and asking me, do I actually want to continue with this process? So in this case I'm going to say yes. If you don't tick the box to say yes you want to, the continue button does not become available. So we'll click continue. Okay. So now it's telling me I've got some incomplete invoices. Asking me, saying I don't need to actually print them to finish the month, but do I want to print them? This is done because you may have some unprinted invoices, unprinted picking slips you're not aware of. This gives you an opportunity to complete that before you carry on with the month end. If you want to address them, you can select no to this, fix up the invoices, rerun through the system month end procedure, and then get back to here and you should not get this message come up. In this case we're going to say yes, because you can say I understand what you might have some forward invoices in there ready to entered today for tomorrow, so I can say yes, I'm ready to go. The same with the mail order system. I've got some mail order invoices in there. I'll say yes, I'm ready to go with it. So a few of the things that this is actually doing while it's going through here. Prepare stock movement details for archive. It's actually preparing all the stock movements that happen over the course of the month and getting them ready for the archive month end. It's expiring, adjusting and balancing the loyalty points if you're running the ACR loyalty system. It's doing a balance on the accounts receivable. It's archiving any completed task controller tasks that you may have. It's getting the profile system values ready for updating. It's deleting pricing and promo modules that you have set to auto delete. So at this point, if you use that auto delete feature, it's actually saying, right, those auto deletes, I'm going to delete those at this point. As well as a number of other processes it's going through, obviously. So now it's completed. We can see at the top we've got a status of complete, and it's told us it took about 2 minutes to run, which is similar to what it took last time. So at this point we can now say, right, I'm happy with that, I quit. Now you'll notice down the bottom here, as going through, it actually had quite a number of little messages telling us what. If you have them with the month and year and you can support, we may ask you if there are any messages or what messages came up in the message bar. This is the area where we talk about when we're asking about the message bar. So at this point we can quit. The next process that we would run now is the archive month end. This is the last process you have to run on the last day of the month to get the system ready for the next day. You don't need to go through and be there for the whole time the archive month end runs for, but you do need to run it. So a lot of people will start the archive month end and leave it to run overnight, come back the next day. The month end log file / sales, that's more of a reference to look up what's happened in previous month ends. You don't need to run that unless you're asked for it or you want to check whether something's occurred. So what you'll notice is my system date has now updated to the 1st of August. So when I started this procedure, I actually did the day end procedure, but it didn't update the date to the new date. We have our system configured that the invoice sales journal automatically updates our system date when it's run. With the month end, when you do the day end procedure, it waits until the month end procedure is run before it updates the date. Okay, so the last thing most people would probably associate with the month end, but is not actually technically part of the month end procedure, is debtor statements. And they can be found up in the debtors area under tasks, debtor statements. They, as I said, are not technically part of the month end procedure within ACR. Most people would run them the next morning when they come in after archive month end is completed. Some people will stick around for archive month end to run and then run the debtor statements and go home while they're running. That's your choice. It's just letting you know that that's not actually technically part of the month end procedure. Okay, so the second of our processes is the bank reconciliation. Now the bank reconciliation is effectively the bank month end. Now you do need to go through and do a bank reconciliation on each bank account you have. It's recommended to keep all of them in line in the same month. However, you can have the bank system get up to 3 months behind the debtor system. So if the debtor system is now in August, you could have the banking system still in May and the ACR system would operate, but it is better to keep it up to date. Most people would do a bank reconciliation within, if not the first trading day of the month, within that first week of the month, to get the bank account up to date and effectively close off the month with the bank account. So to do the actual bank reconciliation, you simply open bank reconciliation, select the account you wish to use and click OK. Now when you're doing this, you would normally have your bank statement either open on screen or printed out in front of you for you to go through and reconcile what's on the screen to what's on the physical statement from your bank. So what you're trying to achieve is basically saying this item on my screen matches up with this item on my bank account statement. I'm happy, flag it. This item matches, this item matches, this item matches. If there is something on your ACR system that is not on your bank statement, leave it unflagged. That means it's an unpresented check or it's an outstanding deposit, so leave those unflagged. If you have something that is on your bank statement but is not yet in ACR, you can use cash payments or cash receipts to enter that directly into your banking system. So these are for things like bank fees and direct deposits that you may not have yet realised were your bank had acknowledged. So you can enter them in at this point. Once you've got all of your items flagged that you need flagged, once you have all of your additional entries entered, you can then accept the batch. This locks the value into the system to say, right, this is what I have flagged, this is what I've entered, I'm ready to start the reconciliation process. Now, while you're entering things, you can look up stuff using the go to date and go to trans. So go to trans, you can type in the transaction number, click OK, and it'll locate that transaction number. Go to date, you can type in a date, and it will go and find the first entry for that date. So if you're trying to see whether something is in the system, you can use those to search for it. So when we're ready, we accept the batch, we can click Test Rec. What this is telling us now is that the last date that the entries for this are is the 31st of July. It's asking me for my statement balance. So this is the balance that appears on your actual statement. These are notations to tell you it is going to print them. So when you're done, you can click OK. What the system will now do is it will bring it up and actually show you the bank reconciliation. So what this is saying is that my cash book has a value of that. I have this many checks that I have told ACR that I've written that have not yet been presented to the bank to be cashed. It's also saying that I have this many deposits that I have told ACR I've put into the bank, but the bank have not yet recognised. So the statement balance should balance up to your cash book plus your unpresented checks less your outstanding deposits. As you can see in this case, it says the reconciliation is in balance. If, however, I put it in and my reconciliation wasn't in balance, so I've taken 40 cents off the end here, what it will tell me is that this is how much my statement, I've told it that my statement should be. This is how much it's calculated the balance is. This is what the difference is. That will then allow me to go back and have a look in the ACR system and try and find where I've made the error for that value. So what we can do, we'll put in the correct value again. Once select OK, this time it'll ask, ready for real reconciliation. If I say no, so if I was doing this over the course of the month, I may reconcile it every day, every week, just so that by the time it gets to the end of the month, I'm not having to try and do 30 days worth of transactions on reconciling it. If that's what you're trying to do, select no, you're not ready for the real reconciliation. If you've got the physical statement in front of you and you're ready to actually do the reconciliation and close, in this case, the banking system for the month of July 2010, select yes. What this will do, this will archive off any of the transactions that were flagged and stop them being visible in the reconciliation. So I will only have what is left outstanding, a balance brought forward, and then what my new values will be. So in this case we can go yes, and it says it's printing the cash book. Now we're going to print this to screen just so you can see what it looks like. Basically just shows you this is the book. These are the entries, this is my value, nice and easy. You can print this off if you want to keep a copy of it. You could save it electronically. It's your choice. So we go OK. So the next one, the cash receipts journal. No records found in this case. Otherwise it would print off the same thing. And the last part is a cash book reconciliation. Okay. So that has now completed. That's all you need to do for the banking month end. It's as simple as that. If you have multiple bank accounts, you would go through and perform that function on each of the bank accounts. As I said, you don't need to necessarily perform it on all of them at the same time. You can do them staggered if you wish. One thing to note is if you've done the banking month end, or if you've done the debtors month end, but have not yet done the banking month end, entries may go into the cash clearing account rather than directly into a sales account. And this is a holding thing, waiting because the bank system is not ready to accept the new entries for the new month yet, which means that any entries like any day end procedures you run on that go through to the cash clearing, when you go to do your daily banking, you need to remember to take them out of the cash clearing rather than out of the sales journal as such that you may have been normally using. Alright, the third process is the creditors month end. This process is generally run anywhere from a few days after debtors month end through to a few weeks after to the debtors month end. It is possible to run the creditors month end 1 month ahead of debtors month end. So while the debtors is now in August, I could have actually I could have done my creditors to August first, then do my debtors to August. It's not common to do it that way, but it is possible. And I say that because we have had situations in the past where people who are not hugely familiar with the month end process have accidentally run creditors month end instead of debtors month end. The creditors month end itself shouldn't be let to get more than 3 months behind the debtors month end. That is just a situation that it will stop you being able to continue to process things if it's more than 3 months behind. It will tell you to actually do the month end. This creditors month end is all around your suppliers and what you owe your suppliers, and keeping that up to date and into the correct month. The reason it's not uncommon for people to run this a few days to a few weeks after debtors is that your suppliers are generally running their debtors month end on the last day or days of the month and may not send you your invoices or your statement for a few days to a few weeks after the end of the month. So, as I said, it's not uncommon for people to leave their creditor system open for a few extra weeks, make sure they capture as many statements and invoices as possible, and process them into the month that they are actually valid, that they were raised for. Creditors month end is very similar to the debtors month end, although you'll notice there's no archive feature here. With the creditor payment allocation, same idea as the debtor payment allocation, except this time you're making sure that you have allocated the correct payments you've made against the invoices that the supplier has sent you. Now, one thing that we have had people in the past have an issue with, and the system will actually tell you, if you've been doing creditors, like you may have gone through doing an auto pay batch just before you went through to do your month end. If you have not done the auto pay control list, the ACR system will alert you when you start to try and do the creditors month, when you actually start to do the month/year end reset creditors. So if you have done that, you do need to make sure that you do an auto pay control list before you start your month end procedure. If you get to that point, it says you need to do that, and you realise you need to go back and do it, restart and run through the whole month end procedure again after you've done the auto pay control list to make sure that things get entered and updated correctly. So, run the creditor payment allocation. Again, you can run this automatic, you can run the alloc version, you can run it manually. In this case, we'll run it automatically and we'll go OK to all dates. It's completed. Excellent. Again, this may take you a bit longer if you're going through allocating things manually, but this is the minimum required to be able to process the creditors month end. Next is the purchase journal. Now this is the purchase journal report, and what this does, this prepares information for the actual archiving. It makes sure that all the purchase journals are printed and that it's ready for the month-end reset to archive the information off. So the next one's the creditor reconciliation. Again, like the debtors reconciliation, it comes up showing you information in here. So you'll have all of your transactions along the top, your opening balance, and again balances. Total invoice. This is the total invoices from your that you've entered in stock receipting. The total invoice value. Total rec is total stock receipts value. Now the invoice value and the stock receipts value may be different depending on any claims and any other freight and other things you've processed. Total journal, again, if you've done any journals to the creditors system, it'll show here. Total payments made to creditors, again, in the cash payment system, it'll show you how much worth of payments you've made. And the total claims processed in stock receipting and purchase journal entry combined. So if you raise some claims in directly in the stock receipts entry screen and some claims through the purchase journal entry screen, the total value will show here as a single value. And with these, all of these values are inclusive of GST. Again, you owe your creditors the amount of money inclusive of GST, so it shows you that. It shows you your balances inclusive of GST. And again, if this is a multi-page report and you wanted a report, or you wanted one page to print off as a reference, it would be the last page that gives you the summation of the reconciliation. And again, your creditors reconciliation should balance to your creditors age trial balance. The reprint questions come up. We'll say no, we don't want to reprint it, we're happy with that. And we'll now come on to the creditor aging. Very similar to the debtor aging, except this time focused on the creditors. Now, with the creditors system, different people or different companies have it set up slightly differently. Some people have the creditors system automatically set to the last day of the month, and they process everything as if it was the last day of the month. Some people have the creditors system set to be the first day of the month, and then they can manually choose to update the date. If your system does not automatically set the creditor's date to be the last day of the month, you do need to make sure you manually adjust that using the set creditors system date before you start the month-end procedure. Again, if you don't do that, it's possible for the creditor payment, the purchase journal, the reconciliation to be out, but more crucially, the creditor aging. This will be based off what date the creditor system is on. So while you can manually adjust it, it's better to have the system set correctly, because the month year-end reset will require you to be on the last calendar day of the month. So again, we can leave this as no report. The current, there's no creditors and short-term creditors, it's just creditors, so you only need to run this report once regardless of how your system's configured. We'll click on OK. And that runs the aging. Again, you can run a report from the aging, compare it to your reconciliation, and that's for debtors and creditors, if you want to do a further balancing on it. The last thing to do is the month/year-end reset for creditors. Again, it specifies if you're doing creditors or debtors or accounting. It tells you what month you're doing. So these are good things to check if you're coming in here. If you're coming in here and not sure whether you've already run it or not, it's a good practice. If you've opened this up, if you're looking at it going, I don't know if I've run this or not, quit out of it, reopen it, check what system it's telling you you're doing and what date what month it's telling you you're doing. Because if you had now gone and tried to open the debtors system, it would be saying debtor date August 2010, but we want creditors for July. So we can double check that that's correct. Again, same process as with the Debtors system, when we're ready, we select active or activate. If it was run less than 15 days ago, so it's telling me yesterday afternoon it was last run, yes, I want to continue. And this will go through clearing and archiving a whole lot of information, things like your account payments that have been made, and that's account payments that have been made through the point of sale or directly through cash payments. All your purchase journal, stock liabilities that have been completed. It'll clear the supplier purchase month-to-date balance. It'll process future account payments and future purchase journals ready for those to be available for you to view. So it actually does quite a lot of stuff behind the scenes here. When we're ready, we click Quit. And that's it. That's the Creditors Month End completed. Nice and simple. Run through the process. That's all. So that leads us to the final month-end process that we need to run, and that's the accounting month-end. Now this is one that for some reason we find people seem to sometimes forget they need to run until they need to do some form of accounting reporting or looking up accounting system information, and then are not sure why they can't see information for the month they're looking for. Now if you're in August, say, as we are working here, and you can only see information back from April or March of that year, and you're trying to figure out why, one thing to check is, have you run an accounting month end up until getting the system up into into August? If you don't run the accounting month end, you can't get the next month available to report against and to see the transactions. So to do the month end, it's under Financials, Tasks. It's a really nice and simple one. Month/year end reset accounting. Now the accounting system won't allow you to do a month end for a month unless the debtors, banking and creditors month ends have already been completed for that month. So I'm now about to do the one to get us into August. If I'd tried to do this before I had done the creditors or before I'd done the banking, it will alert me that I can't do that. I need to do those month ends first. And that's because the accounting month end relies on information from the debtors month end, from banking reconciliation and from the creditors month end to form that final bit of information it archives ready for use. Now with the accounting month end, it is still possible to do journals into prior months after you close a month. It's still possible to do journals into a prior year after you've rolled into a new financial year. You can actually do a journal back to not the prior financial year, the financial year before that, the last day. So the 30th of June 2 financial years ago, you can do a journal to. Any date in the last financial year, you can do a journal to. Any date in this current financial year, you can do a journal to. That's important because some people get a bit worried about, oh, what if I need to journal on that? That's fine. Just that functionality is available. It is not uncommon for the June to July accounting month end to be done even as late as October, depending on accountants and when they have information ready and whether they want you to hold off to have journals done in June rather than journal in July to affect June. So it's not uncommon for that to occur. Now to actually do the reset, other than possibly having to do the general journal summary to actually complete any general journal, like prepare the general journals for archiving, there's nothing else to do but run the month/year end reset accounting. This will tell you if you need to do the general journal summary, but if you're concerned, you could run that first in preparation for it. So again, it shows us accounting, and at the moment it's in May, so we're going to actually be going into June here. So this is a typical example of the month end the accounting month end is behind the rest of the system month ends. So to do that, we simply click Activate. Again, this was run this morning, so yep, I'm happy to do it, and activate. And this will go through, does trial balance and journal checks, archive journal, general journals, roll the GST. Now that's important for BAS reports. Roll any loyalty points, any bulk GL updates it needs to do, and roll over the accounting system for the new date. So when we're done quit, that's it. We've now gone through and completed all 4 month-end processes that the ACR system needs to do. That's it. That's how simple they are. A lot of people get scared or concerned about them because there's different things about, oh, I'm not sure, am I running the right one? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? That's as simple as the month end can be, as we've done here now. So what I'll do, just a few helpful hints to sort of summarise the information we've gone over. There are 4 main month-end processes: debtors, banking, creditors and accounting. For sites that do payroll, there is a payroll month-end. That's not included in this webinar. The banking and the creditors can't get more than 3 months behind debtors. The creditors can't get more than 1 month ahead of debtors. And all month ends need to be done before the accounting month end can be run. Thank you very much for joining us. If you do have any more questions, if you want any more information, you're always welcome to contact one of the training team at ACR or contact your account manager, Matt Knight, and we're more than happy to help you out if you've got any further questions. If you've got questions and you don't want to ask them in this open forum, I can understand that. What I will say at this point is thank you very much. This is our second last webinar of the year. So hopefully you'll join us for our next one in November, which will be our last one. Otherwise, have a great day. Thank you very much.